And now it's week 8, and it is the second lesson of week 8. In the previous lesson, we started to talk about data store, and we looked at example that came from Google, how to store preferences in data store. It was example with one preference, and it was it was the way how it says wants to it was simple app that displaying fake data either as a column or 3 columns. And it was a button to switch this preference according to user choice, either to see 1 column or 3 columns. We'll look at that in details. And also that lesson from the course from Google has a video referring to other examples. That simple didn't look as simple, and I said just code is a little confusing at first. This is perhaps the reason why they didn't include it into the current course and included something simpler. And I also said that on Tuesday I said that I will look deeper into proto data store, because the preferences data store was discussed in reasonable details, and I have one more example for that today. But proto data store was just, in general words, what it means. I promised to look deeper and perhaps even make one example related to that. I did look deeper and make serious effort to make an example. I spent several hours on Tuesday, definitely entire evening plus more, so because I didn't start in the evening, I started in the afternoon, and just about 10 p.m. I just gave up on that. So we don't have example for proto data store. So let's but definitely, it was a huge learning experience about it, so I can share my experience at least about it. What is the difference between preferences and data store was discussed on the video, so I don't have to repeat it, and I already discussed it at the previous lesson. What I have learned later, that preferences data store is actually implemented a special case as proto data store. When I would say proto data store, we assume like proto sounds like a prototype, but technically it's not. Although it sounds like prototype, you create the definition of your data, and after this you use it like a prototype. But it's not actually, proto is not short word for prototype in this case. Proto in this case, short word for protocol, not prototype. So although it sounds like a prototype, you define your data in some form, so it's like search as a prototype, but no. In this case, it's actually short word for protocol, not for prototype, although it feels like it. It is short word for protocol, and technology is coming from protocol buffer technology. This is where this word is coming from. Protocol buffer, or proto buffer short, is a technology for exchanging data between various programs at runtime, or various pieces of the software at runtime. You already know such technologies exist. We can share XML, we can share JSON. For example, and it was a few technologies before that already did, that was doing this in binary format, and XML came up as an idea of somewhat standardizing, of sharing data between different programs. Protocol buffer technology is addressing the same issue and shares data in binary form. So it's not one of the two, it is something third. JSON technology is kind of targeting web, because it came from JavaScript, and technically JavaScript or JSON, it is JavaScript object notation. Proto buffer technology is not web specific because it's a way to define data that can be shared between various programs at runtime in binary form. So it's a format of sharing binary data. It's only data, it's not a program. There is no any provision how to share object with functions in it. It's only in terms of objects. It was a couple technologies before trying to address this issue that are nearly completely dead. So it was, initially it was like introduce it as something like next best thing around, but now it is use it in only in software that started to use it, and now it's too late to rewrite because it's a lot of code. So the idea is not new, but it's optimized and it's supported by Google and other companies because it allows to share data between completely different languages, like a big list of languages that are supported with this technology. But it does require special compiler for it to compile definitions of the data. It is .proto files into classes of that language or some structures of that language. So it does require special compiler to generate classes or structures that match classes in that particular language. That for the program that intends to share data with other programs, like through internet or through some API calls. So it's not specific to even network. It could be used in API calls, like between libraries, for example, not necessarily even programs. So so his approach is to define data in files .proto, and it is a separate language for it. So there is a learning curve to learn how to define this data. My experience from half day of dealing with it, it's not hard to learn. It's because there are only a few combinations how we can do it. But it allows to have objects inside of an object, which is good. It allows to have maps, key value pairs, like map inside of an object. And it doesn't have direct support of lists of arrays, but it allows repetition of the same field. So there is a keyword repeated that when you say something and repeat it, and it allows this data to be repeated multiple times. So when it generates code, it's in Kotlin at least it creates lists, but it's not standard lists, it's a special kind of lists, but it is iteratable. It appears like a great idea, but we need to be careful that a couple technologies like that already dead, that was created and they're already dead. It appears like data store will stay around for many years. So because Google introduced it, data store as replacement of all the technology of shared preferences. And they already recommended it instead of shared preferences. At least for preferences data store. So it's a good idea to learn, it's a good idea to use preferences data store. I already mentioned that we already learned that preferences data store is storing these key value pairs. And proto data format has the data fields inside of it, type map. It appears like they just create one object automatically with map inside to share key value pairs. When When they create files already containing this data, extension on Android is extension of these files on Android exactly the same. So the assumption is it's probably the same format, except when we do store key value pairs, in that case, it is just using automatically generated objects that already have definitions that it's an object with one map in it. So we don't have to define it. It's define it automatically. But if we want to store objects of what we kind of anticipate ourselves, we need to define this as a proto file that is matching the data that you want to store. For example, we want to store raw data, result of the role. So we need to create proto file that is reasonably matching data of raw data of that example. There is no way to generate exactly the same class. It's out of question. The only way is to create a class that will store similar data. Because currently Kotlin is using own implementation, for example, for the list. Not Kotlin standard, but it has some special class for the list. Also, other things are not guaranteed to be implemented exactly the same way as in your class. So the best thing that can be achieved is to generate class based on your proto code that will store the data what you want. It will never be the class that you created yourself. So this is definitely a kind of inconvenience, because you need to retrieve the data as a class that is generated, and after this you will have to copy into the class that you want to use. If you want to stay reasonably independent from data saving system. So we are back to the same situation when we store data in some format, and after this we convert it. So it is, although it is more flexible than storing key value pairs, we will still have to convert it. So it's okay, fine. It reminds me approach that is used in C# and SQL. So last time when I was dealing with it, it was two ways to generate classes based on SQL. It was two ways to generate matching between SQL and SQL tables and classes. Technology is somewhat similar to Room. You can define classes with special annotations, and it will be able to create tables for you based on the classes. That approach is called code first. You write code with special annotation, and it will create SQL tables based on your code in that C# code, not Kotlin, obviously, because it is C# technology, C# classes. And this is called code first in C# Word, like .NET Word. And in Android, it's just not called anything because it's the only one available. There is a backward technology that allows us to create classes based on already existing SQL tables, which is anticipated as convenience because sometimes you already have database, but you want to create a code that is matching given database. That is called data-first approach. Having said, well, idea is great, result is not so great. A result is not so great because it's you rely on classes generated from SQL in your code. And when you write your code, you assume that some classes exist, but you don't even see them. You just make assumptions that something will be there. So compiler is not really helpful about this because you write your code assuming that some code will be generated for you based on SQL. It definitely worked for a while. I'm not sure where this technology went, and people tend to prefer code first, not data first. Even if they already have SQL tables, they create codes that matching the SQL tables themselves. So code first seems to be more convenient technology. But data first is not so bad, and Android is using it in different ways. For example, you already saw that we define data as XML, and it generates classes that contains references to this data, right? For example, resources. We define string resources as XML, and it generates a class r.string with data like r class with data like r.string name of the string referring to the data, which is integer. It will be integer referring to the data. So it's not that useless because people use it, but it's just less convenient when you refer to this data. So this is my reflection on current idea. What about implementation? It appears to me that the technology will stay, but it will not stay in the same form. It appears that most likely, and again, this is my anticipation and based on other technologies evolving, most likely they just wait till Kotlin serialization is done for finished. It's already work in progress. Kotlin serialization is finished directly into proto format. Because there is a project that is doing it, and it is experimental, and most likely they just do it. And in this case, it will become code first, which is more convenient to deal with. When I typed questions to artificial intelligence about it, it provided some answers at how to combine it. It suggests that some people are already doing it. Use Kotlin serialization, which is code first in this case, into proto format. Not compiling proto format, not compiling schemas back to Kotlin classes, which is less convenient in terms of organizing code. You rely on something that doesn't exist yet. There are two other pointers to me that current technology will stay, but will not stay in exactly the same form as compiling proto files. One of them that Android Studio just does not support it. It's supported in some form, but not a convenient way at all. When we add this proto file to Android Studio, it just doesn't even display it. When we go to, you know, when you open Android Studio, let's open to some project auto. Nice game. Okay, let's wait till it builds. Okay, so when we go to Android, this proto file is not even displayed here. It means that most likely they want to address this technology different way. Okay. In order to see, this proto file is supposed to go into a folder which is even hidden here. We can see this folder if we go to project files and find it there, not in build, in source main proto. And after this, we'll see like raw data, whatever I define it. Okay. A compiler doesn't give errors when it's compiled, but don't refer to this. Maybe there's a mistake there. Okay. Issue is that by default, it's not even highlighted because it requires separate plugin, which is not included in Android Studio in order to see it in colors. So there's no support in Android Studio directly out of the box for proto files. So in my interpretation of current situation, this is how it looks like, proto files. When you want to create an object, you create a message and define data. As you see, it's not neither Kotlin nor C#, its own language to define it. Right? If you want to have an object inside of an object, you create one message and you refer to this as a type inside of another message. So this is the approach for proto data. It is highlighted only because I installed a separate plugin for it. By default, it's just black and white. Also, it currently, in order to compile it, it needs copy-pastes in build Gradle. Build Gradle that comes with, 1 second. I go to Android. Build Gradle that inside of app. So this is app. Okay. Currently, it requires separate copy-paste. I ask it artificial intelligence engines, browse it. It requires this kind of thing in order to compile it. It is referring to, as you see, not as we see, but it is referring to a Kotlin compiler, not Kotlin, protobuf compiler. Similar technology existed, like including compilers separately for special tasks, for different other technologies. For example, compose technology, it used to be separate compiler to compile compose. Now it is integrated as a plugin. Also, it was compilers, a similar thing, copy-pastes for special cases for view, all the GUI view, as they had it for they had something similar for safe arguments. And later they could integrate it in a nicer way. So most likely it won't look at least like that, with some random copy-paste into, not random, some copy-paste from documentation into here. Once you put it here, it won't even compile. It will complain right away because it goes into conflict with KSP. It shows like it's not enough. And it will suggest you to do this, this, and this. Only one of the list works. And it is this one I copy-pasted. I tried Gemini, whatever it's called, this artificial intelligence, to ask questions about integrating a protobuffer into given project. It just aborts answer. It's not even answering. It shows abort. Okay, error abort. So obviously it's not current state of like reliable. I tried the same Gemini technology on web because here it's just supporting answers. It did provide information, and I did use it, at least for this part. But it still fails. It still fails. It does generate some files, but something is missing, and what is missing is not clear, actually. I don't say that it fails all the time, obviously not, because some people use it. But it's not in the state where it is convenient and easy to use. So when classes are generated, it is definitely missing something. It does generate it, so obviously compiler is compiling something. But it is complaining that something is missing, but it is hard to figure out what, because it's errors in generated code. It's not errors in my code. It's not errors in the code that we write. It is errors in generated code. And who knows what it is actually not including it, and why. And so it appears like technology will be improved, so later in a couple of years, it's a good idea to rely on it, maybe. Or it will be done through Kotlin serialization, which will be easier to handle. You don't have to write files in the language that you have to learn. It will be in Kotlin, and it's already serialized in proper format. This is my anticipation how it will be done, but who knows? It appears like when you ask artificial intelligence on web on that, answers suggest that people are already using it. This experimental technology of serializing Kotlin into proto data format, proto buffer data format. So this is where I give up on it. I honestly spent several hours. I started in the afternoon, ended close to 10 p.m. And do we have to use it? Technically, no. Technically, no. Because if you want to save an object, you can always save it as key value pairs, and it's not that difficult. But of course, you will have to do conversion. Also, any object can be converted to string either manually or through serialization, and you can save it as a string, and it will be just one value. Right? It will be a pair of some key of that object referring to a value which is string automatically converted from an object through serialization to string. Also, we can serialize it into JSON, and JSON can be done. JSON is essentially the string. We can serialize it into JSON and back from JSON. So we don't really even have to use it until it's stable. So this is my dive into this learning the technology. I tried to, I didn't even try. I thought about, okay, let's make an example where we save it as object as just is a value or key value pairs. It is not difficult at all, and I will show where to put it. I just thought that why do we need to do hacking and learn how to hack? It's not difficult to figure it out when we need it, but maybe by the time when we need it, they will already have technology working, so we don't have to hack it. So I didn't push this proto data store into GitHub because it's not working. What's the point? It is failing at compilation time. Project source, no, project files. In the build, it generates files. You see generated folder. In sources, it generated, you see, game state, local game state, classic Kotlin classes based on proto file. So some compilation worked, but you see, it's okay. Something is obviously missing, and it's not compiling. It generated classes, but they're not compilable at this moment. So it's probably some settings somewhere or some incompatibility between libraries, who knows. So I put it on hold. Okay. Don't like invest time into learning it unless you really have to. But at this moment, we don't even have to. Okay. If we really need to save an object, we can always create a table and store it as a one row. Okay? You will have a table for just one row, but okay. This is the most brute force approach. Or you can convert it to string and store it as a value of a key value pair. It's another approach. Or you can convert it into just a set of key value pairs. So there are ways around. We don't have to dive into something that currently doesn't work unless we really, really have to for some reason. So this is about proto data store in this game. So at some point, after several hours of trying to deal with this issue, it was definitely lots of learning experiences. I learned about proto buffer technology. I learned about this language. So language is not that difficult to master. Okay, it's maybe master is difficult to become really pro in it. It takes time, but for simple things, it's not that complicated. Maybe my proto file has mistakes, so don't refer to it. And this is causing this issue, but it's not actually showing error in the file itself. You see, it's something in generated code. But so this was definitely a learning experience. Speaking about when we go to APP architecture data store, remember there are two files, the two labs at the bottom. And one of them is about preferences data store and proto data store. This code was referred from video from current course. I said that this is actually code from this example. Remember? Yeah? And this is exactly the same functionality implemented with proto data store. This is with preferences, so they store data as two key value pairs. So they have a simple object with two values. And in this example, they store it as two key value pairs. And in this case, they store it as an object. Which is a great idea in terms of comparison, that you can store objects as key value pairs. And fine, right? This is what I said, that it's not a big deal. What is the issue about these labs? Why they are not included? One of the reasons it's not included into course that we're referring to, because they use GUI which is not Compose. Current course is based on Compose. They use older GUI, Views GUI. So this code did not fit into current course at all because GUI is totally different. So it is probably primary reason why it's not in the current course. Because it is older GUI format, object-oriented, where layouts are created through XML, and XML is processed. So this is, again, kind of data first, right? XML is processed, and it's creating classes based on creating classes based on the defined XML. So this is older approach. It is indeed creating classes based on XML layout. And classes, it's one class. So it's, again, this is kind of data first. But it's not the main issue with this. It is done 3 years ago, so it's not that old. But current Android Studio, you cannot even open it. When you try to clone this project, it starts to complaining after you've just cloned. You cannot open, and you need to do this, you need to do that, and whatever it suggests, it just doesn't work. So, although we can see code because it is text, right? We don't see it as Android project because it's not Android viable working Android project anymore. Perhaps they will fix it later, but currently it's not something that we can just compile and see, unless we invest all time into making it compile. In Apply, it is the same code, but just 2 code branches. So it is the same project with 2 code branches, one for preferences data store and one for proto data store. Although GUI is old, data access layer exactly the same because we can reasonably separate data access from GUI. And so in terms of understanding what they do, it's kind of helped because even without understanding GUI, it is other things are exactly the same besides GUI. So in this case, it is helpful in terms of information, but it's not helpful in terms of how to make code compile because it's not even openable, right? It's not compilable. So if in some examples we can copy paste libraries and rely on this work, right? This is not the case because current Android Studio does not understand the settings for the project. It just doesn't do it. So it's another sign that technology is likely to stay, but it will not stay in exactly the same way because they didn't have direct prototype, proto files support. It's not even displayed by default, the file itself in the tree. Like you go to Android, it's not displayed. You have to go to project files, and after this, you find it in project files. Like this, in source, main, proto, this one, you see. So this is my learning experience from it. Hopefully it is useful information, so you don't waste your time on that anytime soon. And if you need to save an object, just find other way, like key value pairs, or convert it into string, save it as a string, or convert it into JSON, send it to JSON. Because conversion to JSON is stable technology. Hopefully conversion to proto buffer format will come as serialization of Kotlin because project already exists, it's experimental. Hopefully it will be stable soon. And we don't have to deal with this separate compilation. This is about proto data store, my experience. Hopefully information is useful. Speaking about branch that I did push to GitHub, and it is preferences data store. Check out. We need to clean and rebuild because it contains files generated from previous branch. So I need to clean project so it won't have these broken files in it. Clean will delete this build folder. Build, clean project. Yes, you see that build folder deleted. Next, both of them require different libraries. So for this reason, we need to synchronize as well, because it's different libraries. I remember that Google example that we used at the previous lesson to store preference. It is slightly older. It's probably 2 years old or something. It is using older formats for libraries, library files. So for this reason, it's a good idea just to have one with current state of it, so we can copy paste if we need it. It has proto file here, but in this, but you will not have it if you clone it. It is side effect of that I have I switched branches. Perhaps it's better just to reclone it. So let's reclone it. So I close this one. So we will have a clean thing, and builds from a broken project will not mess with it. So it is dicegame.android. So let's reclone it. And I will delete this one as the entire folder on my hard drive. Projects. Dicegame Android. Move to trash. Okay. So copy and clone repository, Command V, Dicegame Android, clone. What happened? Invalid Gradle JDK configuration found, define it in Java home of the project. Do you have the same issue or no? Please clone it and tell me if you have the same issue or not. Yeah, probably use embedded, yeah. This is the safest, actually. It is probably a side effect of using IntelliJ for server. You may run into that today as well. Okay, so let's see. Main branch is the same. I didn't touch it. I created a branch call it using hilt, and this branch preferences data store is branching from using hilt. So if we go to Git, we will see that main branch is used here and here. I created branch using hilt and explained this at the previous lesson. And in addition to that, I added things to use preference data store to store the number of dice into in the preferences. So it is just built up on top of the code that we already discussed. Okay. So added preferences data store library. So what did they do? In TOMML file, I added ID of this library, version number of this library. At the bottom, I added the library itself with referring to that version. Where did I get this information? I refer it to older file documentation, and remember that it is the same information, but is one string, so we split it into 3 or 2 pieces and copy-paste it here. So this was my approach. It didn't require any special plugin to that. So this is how I added what I added in TOMML file. Also, I did it build Gradle file in app folder. I added implementation, and this is reference to alias of that library in TOMML file. And as you see, this is end. I didn't do anything in addition to that. As this was enough to add preferences data store as dependency. Next. Roller view model. And now view model is picking data from preference repository. So I created preference repository to get data from it, from data store. So view model now has dependency on preference repository. And that is injected, so I had to create preference repository logic for it. Okay. So I added init block that is running when view model constructor is called, so to retrieve current number of dice from preference repository. Right? So preference repository get number of dice flow, collect. So I'm dealing with flow different way from Google example, because my situation is more complicated than in Google example. This is why this somewhat deserves attention. Because in Google example, they just retrieve a number from the flow and use it directly. And for their case, state is already flow. It's not, it doesn't have other things as a logic. In my case, state depends on two things. One, data from the settings and data generated based on data generated by pressing roll button. So my situation is more complicated than in Google example because state is coming from two sources. Random data generated by roll and preference coming from data store. So in this case, since situation is more complicated, I decided, okay, let's try brute force, and if it works, stay with brute force. So I'm not collecting flow directly into state flow like they did, because it worked in simple case. In my case, if I collect, I will get only one piece of information into state flow. It will be number of dice. But my state flow contains entire state, which is a result of the roll and number of dice. So I need to combine two pieces. So what did I decide? I decided to create state flow initially and say initial state. It is not roll it with some 3 dice on it. And it will stay with 3 dice till information is received from state flow, from data store. So in its state, as you see at the bottom, it is just default number of dice, which is 3, and not roll it. So initial state, it is not roll it with 3 dice. But when our view model is created, init is part of the constructor. I'm launching task here. I'm launching task, which is asking preference repository, get number of dice flow, and I'm collecting. Collect call, it's not just retrieving one piece of information, like calling suspend function. Suspend function give you data, and this is the end of the story. Collect is smarter. It keeps collecting. So it is when data is received, this part is executed. When data is received again, this part is executed again. So collect, unlike calling suspend function, is a repeatable process. It will be repeated on each new data which is coming. So It's also our first introduction to collect because we didn't use it, so it's useful, right? We had flow, we didn't, but we call it function which is shortcut collect as state that was creating objects with state object with collected data into state object. This is brute force approach of collecting data from the flow by calling collect. So it is useful on its own. Okay? So collect block will run each time when data is received. So this will give us more flexibility than just collect a state. And what will happen when data is received? When data is received, I'm flipping to not roll it for this number of dice. Okay? So when data is received, it will not keep current state with whatever was there, and it's not a bug, it's a feature. It was always, even if previous version it was like this. When we switch number of dice, it goes to not roll it. Because I didn't want to have conflicting information on the screen. It displays 3 dice, but selection is 2 dice, for example. Okay. What happens on roll? It is the same. I didn't even change, you see, because it picks number of dice from the state. And state is updated here. What I added, on change number of dice, previously was flipping state to not roll it with given number of dice. So it was previous code. And now it is not flipping this directly because flip is done here with collecting. See? So when data comes from a data store, we flip it there. But in this case, instead of flipping it, it goes to data store. So what did we use? Single source of truth, right? Only owner of the data is able to change it. Other things are reflecting it. So on change number of dice is calling repository to change data. And repository goes to data store, and data store inserted into the flow, and flow is here, and we're picking it. Okay? So we propagate data down, and we propagate events down, calls down, and data is propagating up. So we use one directional data flow. This is similar to what we did in room, and we use single source of truth. So instead of updating directly on the screen, we update it in database, and the database state is reflected to the screen through flow. So approach is similar to room. Okay. It's definitely more to think about it compared to Google example, because Google example is designed to be simple. Okay? But we don't always have some simple situation, so we have to combine data. And this is combining data. What did I do in repository? In repository, I did the same as Google. So I essentially copy-pasted, and I rename it. They store Boolean, I store int. But let's open that repository and see. Preference repository. It's totally new file, so this is why it looks everything in green, because when you commit new file, this is how it looks. So let's open the file here, so we don't see everything in green. Okay. Preferences data store. Data, raw data repository, UI. Where's preferences data store? It is wrong. It is wrong branch. It's main branch. I need to switch branch to preferences data store. Check out. Because I was looking through commits, I see commits as using Git window. Okay. Let's synchronize project because now it's using different libraries, right? It is synchronizing, so let's wait. You see preferences repository. So I'm using exactly the same approach, except I have flow of integers, not flow of booleans. What if we want to store not one integer, we want to store entire object? We can still do it inside of the same approach, like this. But please look up. Here it is. We retrieve preference object here that contains key value pairs. It's here. We catch exception, and now we do mapping. Preferences, now both dice, and this is integer. And it goes as integer instead of preference object in the flow. So we do data transformation using map on preferences. And this is our integer. How to deal with this situation? If we store more than one item and want to create an object, create a variable, assign number of dice. Create another variable here, assign other pair to that. Create third variable if you need, assign third pair. And you retrieve it using different keys, obviously, because it's key value store. Okay? So you will have, for example, 3 variables that retrieve data from this preference, 3 variables that storing data from this preference object. Last line in the map, call constructor of that object using the data. This way you create objects from key value pairs and directly insert it into the flow. So you will get a flow of your objects created and stored in preferences data store. So we don't have to use proto data store. We can just do a trick of storing pairs, and conversion is done here inside of repository. It is that simple. Did you catch it? Look, preferences contains everything, key value pairs. In our case scenario, it is just simple because it's only one pair. And I store it here. Okay. For example, my object contains more than one item. So I assign this to a variable, retrieve another pair right here, next line. Assign it to another variable, so you'll have 2, or 3 even. And after this, I call constructor of that object that I want to insert into flow. So it will be exactly the same outside interface as you would do it with proto data store. So we can easily go around. If proto data store just doesn't work at this moment, we can easily go around. Where did I get this information? By looking through that 2 examples. Remember that 2 examples, you cannot really open it, you cannot compile it, but you can look at the code. Because it's a text, right? You can, even if it's not openable as a project, you can see text of the code. And this is what they did. They created an object that contained 2 key value pairs, and they just called constructor right here. So it's easy way to go around. And they have the same GUI based on different data storage. So that was the trick. And this is why proto data store is good, but it's not unavoidable. Okay. I added extra with context dispatchers IO, and they didn't have it in their code. Technically, it's not necessary here, because in my view model, role of view model, I also have dispatchers IO specified here. You don't have to do it twice. Google recommends doing it in repository because people tend to, where did I go? Okay. Google recommends to do it with context in repository because people tend to forget it next to launch. And if you do it in repository, you don't need to write it in next to launch dispatchers IO. So it is just extra thing that Google recommends, but they don't always follow on recommendation. What does it mean? We are launching a concurrent task, right? Some task running reasonably independently from other code, right? Concurrent task. And this task is executed by some dispatcher, task dispatcher. And those task dispatchers are optimized for specific needs. This is optimized for input-output, which is logical because we are reading and writing into file. Okay. So this is rationale, and it definitely works. Okay, let's try. Okay, so I didn't store a result of the roll. I decided that I will just tell that it's not difficult, and you saw it's not. A side effect, which is a little tricky with data store, you need to, since your number of dice is not fixed, right? You have array with several numbers. Storing array with several numbers cannot be done as key value pairs. You have to convert that array into something. Because how would you do that? Unless you have a key for every element of that, right? It's not difficult. I already was dealing with this issue before. I was just joining these numbers with plus sign into string. Brute force that works. You can just join these numbers with plus sign into one string, and you can store that as a key, as a value. Where did I deal with it? I had a version of dice roller with stored history. When you click roll, 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 it builds database table with previous rolls. And since number of dice is not fixed, somehow you cannot call it with fixed number of columns, right? You have a issue with that. Because table has fixed number of columns, you cannot change them. So I decided to store data in one column and as a string with numbers joined with plus sign in between. And after this, you retrieve this as a string. You can split it easily by plus because Kotlin provides split function for string, and it will give you array. So it's list. It will give you list. So it is straightforward approach. Join it with plus sign and split it on plus sign after that. So it's not that difficult. I just decided not to bother because it was already after 9 p.m. and I decided that coding after 9 p.m. is not a great idea. Okay, so okay, let's run it. Okay. So you see it remembers 4. Because default is 3, but it picked 4 because last time I was running with this with 4. So if I switch it to 2, close this, open it again, it will be 2. So I stop it, so program is finished. I run it again. You see it's 2. So it is saving the data. It will not save a result of the roll because there's no functionality. Although we can do it, why not? Perhaps not the same key, perhaps not, maybe not the same file even. When we create data store with specify file, so it can be a separate file if we want. So it is possible. It's not even difficult. Where does it store this? It is a file. So let's find this file. We need to open Device Explorer. Click here and find Device Explorer. In the Device Explorer, you will see hard drive of this emulator. In this hard drive, you will see data folder. In the data folder is another data folder. Right? And after this, you see package name of it. And this is where we saw database files, right? In this case, it's a file, and you see data store folder. In the data store folder, you see preferences, preferences DB. Okay. If you double click, nothing happens. So it's not supported to see it right away. But there is software that can convert it, but you have to get it from here by saving and open it using Windows, essentially. So you cannot easily click on it and see what is inside. Current technology just don't let you do that. What I didn't explain, I didn't explain dependency injection because Google example is not using dependency injection, remember? So I used it with dependency injection, so some of the code is somewhat different. So in my preference repository relies on data store object to be created. This similarly to the Google. So when Google is calling constructor, it is provided to the constructor. What did they do? They stored data store object in the context as extension property of the context. And they stored repository in application object. So they created repository on crate inside of application class. So this is what they did. And they created view model factory. They wrote view model factory code in what's this companion object of view model class itself. So this was the approach. I use dependency injection, so it is somewhat differently arranged. So how it was done? In repository module, I still need to create data store object. So this is how it is. It does need application context in order to create it, and this trick returns data store object. How do I know? I asked artificial intelligence, okay? Because you don't know how to guess it, okay? It is this one. Preferences data store, get value, and this creates preferences data store. In order to get references repository, we need data store object, and it is returning preferences repository. So now it is injectable, and we know where it goes. It goes to view model as dependency injection to the constructor. So this is how it was done. It appears like even simpler than without dependency injection. Okay. And now it's time to break because we're close to middle point of the lesson. After that, this discussion is done for now. But we have other exciting things to do after break. After break, we need to discuss assignment, which is quick because most of it was already discussed at the previous lesson. Next, remember, I promised that we will have at least one example where we have a server, we have a program that getting data from the server display. Yeah, here it is. This is for second half of the lesson. Okay. So let's relax. Now it is 9:20. Let's relax for 15, 20 minutes, 15 or 20. Before the break, I mentioned that we can use various tricks in order to store array in the data format that is not intended for arrays. For example, joining this into strings and it's any kind of conversion or serialization into string or JSON. I was dealing with this before for fun. And this example was used a year ago for the course, and this time I decided not to use it, but just probably to show how it can be done right now. So it is called dice roller, not dice game. It's just slightly different name. It is in the same GitHub, my repositories. If you search for dice game, it will come up. I just cloned it, so it is working. What does it have? It has the settings screen, so it has navigation. So unlike in current example where settings is just drop down entrance, it is separate screen. And it also has a history. By default, it's empty when it starts, when we don't roll, and roller. For example, we roll 3, 3, 3, 3. It shows history total, so because it remembers history, it can calculate it. So it is calculated. Then if we go to settings and roll 2 dice, then go to roller, it shows last roll, but it's already flipped settings to 2 dice. Now it is 2 dice. And then, for example, go to settings, flip it to 4 dice, and then roll 4 dice. Go to history, we will see all rolls. You see, started with 3. And then when I flip it to 2 dice, I had rolls. Then 4 dice. Okay. And how does it store this thing? It doesn't have details. If I click on it, nothing happens. It doesn't have details for the history. At the bottom, it shows history total and roll count, how many. It is doing this through database. It is storing history inside of room database tables. So if we go to app inspector, you see app inspection, we will find that it has table for history, and you see this is roll value stored as one column. So this is where I used the trick. I just joined these values into string with plus sign. And this program does remember last roll because it remembers history. It is, when it starts, it will just retrieving last item in the history, so it starts with last roll. And so if we stop it, run stop and continue. This is not the current app, it is different app. It is previous one. So I started, and you see it shows last roll with 4 dice and what was there. Because it starts with doing database query and finds last roll and displays it. So things can be done by various ways and just find whatever works best for you, essentially. This is using data store to store number of dice. And it's not using data store to store last roll because it stores entire history, so it's doing database query to find the last one. If you're curious about the code, project's called Dice Roller. It's on GitHub in the same set of repositories. It's called Dice Roller minus Android. It works and compiles. It is updated a year ago. This is not latest. Side effect of this thing, because it was a year ago, I use it capped and KSP at the same time. KSP is a newer technology designed to replace capped. At that time, capped was better with Hilt than KSP. KSP was working with Hilt, but doesn't always did it. Currently, Hilt can work reasonably well with KSP. This is why I switched it for not using capped this year. But this project is using both. It is similar technology, but capped is newer and it compiles faster. The result is not faster, but compilation time is faster. So if I update libraries, I will probably get rid of capped and I'll set it up with KSP. So it was just a quick chat about things mentioned in the first half by accident. So it works if you carry can look up. Preference database, this part is done. For now, let's go back to Slate and talk about slightly more exciting stuff like assignment 3. Assignment 3 is due 2 weeks from today, so you have plenty of time to do it, but do not postpone it till the last moment. Because many things can go wrong if we just use new stuff. And it is indeed somewhat new because in this assignment it is required to use HILT, it's required to use retrofit to retrieve the data. What is good and easy is that you already have examples that is doing all of it, so you can copy-paste library setups for it. So you don't have to figure it out yourself, what kind of library to include. So what is asked to do? Develop an Android application, Flower Data, that displays data and images hosted on web, similarly to remote data code branch of PET data. PET data has remote data branch that has similar code and similar libraries, obviously, so that part can be copy-pasted. Where data is coming from? Data is, as you see, it is on cPanel, and it is this JSON. So what is asked, you use retrofit, HILT, and details, and list and details. So obviously you have lots of details, so you can show this line on details, but not in the list, for example, that description line. So it's about where to get images. It's also a link to images folder, also on cPanel, those like Carnation and so on. Okay. So this is structure of it, probably somewhat similar to PET data example. Even structure of the data is similar. Of course, data fields are different, so you have to code your own classes for that. Customize appearance, and shouldn't be too long. But do not postpone it till last days, because things can potentially go wrong because you are dealing with new material. Okay. So this is, since it was mostly discussed at the previous lesson, I keep it short. I just emphasize that what is required. Using Kotlin, using Compose, using HILT dependency injection, using retrofit, and use repositories for that, like in this PET data example. Right? Make your application look present. Do not invest too much time into it if you have limited time. Just take care that fonts are easy to read, stuff is arranged sensible way on the screen, so you don't have huge empty spaces sideways on the side or something like that. Or you don't have margins where it is, any normal human being will assume that it will be a margin. So, okay. So have it like sensible appearance, essentially. Requirement, it should not look broken. Okay. What to submit? Usual way. Nothing. They delete build folder, zip it, and upload it. So this is about assignment. It is assignment 3, and your project for final exam practical will be like that. So it is in your best interest to do it thoughtfully, so you can do similar thing quickly during practical part. Assignment 4 will use cloud, and cloud in particular one, Firebase, and it will be an assignment since you have a lot of time to do assignment, but it will not be on final exam because it takes time to make it all. So invest time in doing assignment 3, and you have 2 weeks to do it. It is intentional, although it's not long, because it's like practicing for final exam. Next. Remember that we talked about retrieving data from a server, and so let's do that. In order to do it like hands-on experience, it's better to have both on this on your desktop, because a server will display messages, send receive a request, send response, so you'll see the kind of updates going on. So for this reason, we need to have some software to run it. First, we need to have a server itself. Second, we need to have a system to see content of it, to click run button, something like that. So install IntelliJ IDEA Ultimate. What is that? IntelliJ IDEA Ultimate It is not free, but it is free for you because you're a student. And you can update license as long as you have shared an email. License is for 1 year. And before it expires, like a couple of weeks, they will send you email to click on it, and it will take you to the website, click OK, and the license is updated. It is free also for teachers. So I keep updating this for more than a decade this way, and it still keeps updating. It is extremely good software, so it's a good idea to get familiar with it. It looks and works like Android Studio because Android Studio is based on it. So Android Studio, it is IntelliJ IDEA, not Ultimate, but Community Edition, with lots of Android stuff added by Google. So it looks and acts very similarly to Google, and you already saw, not Google, Android Studio, you already saw me using it for different projects when I explained Git rollbacks, right? I ran it an Angular project to show how to go back to previous commits in Git. It was in some class, lesson several weeks ago. So you already saw me running it, and it is good for running Kotlin projects, server-side projects, any kind of web projects, written in JavaScript, Angular, React, TypeScript. So it is quite good software. So I highly recommend you to install it. You will not use it in assignment. You will not use it in exam, obviously. It will be used in another course in your program in coming January. So it's a good idea to get license since it will last for 1 year before it requires to renew. So you can go through that course in January without renewing license. You can just run update, and it will use existing license. So it's a good idea to install, at least because it is in another course. Our course is called Web Application Design Implementation. I will teach a couple sections. Other sections are taught by some other teacher. And it is about the same, but of course teachers change things. So that course will use Java. I will use, for this example, I will use server done similarly to that course, but I wrote it in Kotlin. So you can look at the code and you can understand it. So that technology is called Spring Boot technology. It is one of the most common technologies on Java virtual machine. There are only two, actually, for Java all around, Java Enterprise and Spring. Spring Boot, it's a version of Spring, and it is currently used by, officially known, currently used by Scotiabank, and it's used by Netflix. How do I know? They made presentations at Spring Boot conference, and they reported that they used it and how they used it. So, and it is two large companies that use this technology, Scotiabank and Netflix, and many others also use. Technology is quite advanced. It has a lot of features, and if you want to have a program with extremely fancy server side, it's a way to go. If server side is not fancy, you just need to store data and display it. Do not do it, because there are a simpler way of doing it. So it is this particular technology, Spring Boot technology, Spring technology, designed for complicated backends. And they're best for complicated backends. If you try to do something simple, it is definitely not the easiest. Okay. So just because of this reason, when students do project like Capstone project, almost no one is using it, because Capstone does not require that complexity on the server side. Most students use serverless technology, where you don't need to create a server code yourself. You just configure cloud to store your data for your project. So you do it by clicking and adding some simple code. You don't need to write code yourself as a server. So most students choose serverless technology, not writing server. Some students do C# code and upload it to cloud. It is definitely more work. And C# code are easier to do than this because it comes with code generators. You don't have to write the code. You can click, 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 do some selection, click again. And it is the reason why students stick to C# when they do capstone if they need a little more complicated than serverless technology. This is far more flexible, but it has learning curve, harder to find information. But for large projects, this is what banks do, this is what fancy companies do for their backends. So it is not, it's definitely not the simplest, but simple things can be done. Today you will see that it's not difficult to do programs that sends you a random quiz, and you will see it will be explained, can be explained in 20 minutes. It's that simple. Especially if it is like Kotlin, you know, Kotlin and stuff. This technology can be done using, it is Java technology, but you can write programs using different languages, including Kotlin. Java is primary language, Kotlin is supported. Most people do it in Java, and this is why information is easier to find in how to do it in Java. In Kotlin, you can do it by analogy because the name of the classes is the same. You can type it, it will help you to do. And this is what I did yesterday. So in order to run it, you need to have Java installed. It has to be either Java 17 or 21. I assume that at least one of them are installed. So if you want to be sure, just go to Oracle, install Java 21. Okay. So you click on this, it will take you to Java 21. 25 is not supported. Go with 21. And download it and install it. So it is to run that server. Next, you need to get IntelliJ IDEA Ultimate itself. And it is a two-step process. First, you need to download it and install it. Or it is probably better just to go to website first and get license. So it is an independent things. If you download and install it, it will suggest you free license for 30 days, which is reasonably good for now because we will use it for one lesson only. So 30 days free license would probably cover it. But if you want to just do setup for next half year, you just get license now, it will be good for a year. So this is what I suggest you. And after this, it is a renew. You go to license here to website. If you didn't create account there, you need to create account. Click on this icon and create JetBrains account or login. When students do so, they typically make mistakes. Of course, you can log in this way or create account this way. You see, or create account, right? Create account. You need to remember how you did it. Because license will be attached to one account, not to all of them. If you have several accounts, only one of them will have license. Okay? So you have to remember the way how you created account. And be careful about this one. Continue with email and continue with Google. If you use Gmail for continue with email, it is not the same account as continue with Google. Although it will be your Google login, like your Google email. It will be different account. And only one of them will have license. So the most common mistakes, that's why software is not working. Students accidentally create more than one account because there are multiple options to deal with it. Just do one thing and stick to it. When you click create account, click account, it will give you the same options, right? Continue with email. If you use Gmail, remember that you use a Gmail here, not on the top. Okay? So first, create account this way, and after this, apply for license. It is easiest. Create account if you didn't have it, and apply for license. How to apply for license? There is a link on slides, and this license is free for all students and teachers. They validate your student, that you're a student because you will use student email when you apply for license. It is not, doesn't have to be the same email. No requirement. But when you apply for license, you have to type your student email in application form. That is a requirement. But you can use any email here. It doesn't matter. Okay. Just first create account. Okay. And after this, and remember which option you use it to create account. It's critical. Don't use another one because it will create another account for you. Okay, questions? No? Next, after you're done with that, I think I did it with continue with email and I did it for Google, but I did it with login, not for create account, because I already have one. After you did with create account, you apply for license. It is here. Get Sheridan, get your license here, educational license. Click on this, and it said request now. And this is application form. In this application form, it's critical to type your Sheridan email, not the one that, not necessarily the one that you created for account. Use it for account. It has to be, it doesn't have to be the same. But in this case, it has to be email, not the one which ShareNet in it. Because the one with ShareNet, it's not email. It is your login to Sheridan's system. Okay? Because if you use ShareNet in it, they will send email to that address and you will not receive it because that address does not work as email. Okay? It has to end with @sheridancollege.ca because ShareNet dot will not work as email. Okay? When you fill it up, you see student, undergraduate. In my case, I selected teacher. I'm teacher. Okay, and personal, it will ask you to verify. Click on that, and you will see that in email. You click on this, it will go with verify. And you're not under 13. I accept license. Don't have to, and apply. I will not click apply because already applied. After this, you will receive your email in Sheridan account because you typed that. And this way, they will know that you're a student because you have access to student account. After this, it will take you to login website again, and you need to log in exactly the same way, not to create another account, login now, because you already have one. And on that website, it will ask you to confirm that you agree with license. After this, it will not work. You have to, after logging in, requesting license and logging in, you need to click some confirmation checkbox, okay, that you agree to license, and after this, it will start working. And it will show that you have a license. Okay. After confirmation, when you go to your account, I don't use Sheridan, I use Gmail for that, I believe. I don't remember actually. Did I use Gmail or Sheridan? I think I used Sheridan, so let's see. Yes, I used Sheridan for that. And after login, you will see that you have, after agreeing, you will need to see that one. After you agree to license, because if you don't see it in your account, educational PROG license, you cannot really activate it. So before installing and activating, make sure you have this in your account, otherwise it's waste of time, okay? Resolve this till the point, this point till you install it. And as you see, it gives you access to all software provided by JetBrains. It is not just IntelliJ IDEA Ultimate, it's also WebStorm, but WebStorm, it is just part of it. You know that WebStorm is quite popular web development software, and IntelliJ IDEA Ultimate includes all functionality of WebStorm in it. So it contains more stuff. It used to have Android development before, and now they don't, because Android Studio is evolving so fast they cannot keep it anymore. Although Android Studio is based on this software, they stopped including Android development a while ago, like a couple of years ago. So it doesn't have Android development anymore in it, but it has a lot of other options. After this, when you see this in your account, just run install. And make sure that you install Ultimate version, not Community. Because Community version does not have web development in it. It is specifically for like plain Java, plain Kotlin. But it doesn't have enterprise software like this one in it. All right. After this, when you see this in your account, educational PROG license, you install it, and when you run installer, go default, all default settings till the end, next, 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 next. When you run it first time, it will be option to activate license. Do not go with free one. It will ask you to log in. It will be option login to validate with login. It will open, you click on a link inside of IntelliJ, and it will take you to the website to log in. And after this, it will start working. So validate with login. Okay. So let me try to show that. Okay. So when you open IntelliJ first time, you will not see list of the products here, previous projects. You will see these options, and it will be something like manage subscription. You go with manage subscriptions. Okay. When you run it first time, click here and manage subscriptions. It will take you here, but I already activated. This is why I don't have a link with validate with login or something, or activate with login. If you didn't activate it, it will be option to validate with login. Go to the manage subscription, and after this is activate with login or something like that. You will see. So this is how to activate it. It is, although you can do it with 30 days free, it is more trouble, actually. Because after this, you need to deactivate that one, remove it, and create new one. So if you do it now, you don't have to do it in the beginning of next term, like winter term, when you have another course that is using it. I assume that the other teacher who will teach it will also use it, because we just agreed to use this one. Did you do the progress in installing? Okay, so first is probably better, first create account, second get license, and after this install software with next, 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 next. And make sure you do installation of Ultimate, not Community. Questions? Okay, I will close this one because it's already activated. I'm not sure why do you have some kind of on and off lights in this room. Okay. It's like it has mind on its own. Okay, so going back to Slate. After we install it, we will need to clone the server. I put the server code on GitHub, and it is here. Mass trainer server Spring Boot Kotlin. Cloning project with IntelliJ 100% the same, is 100% the same as cloning using Android Studio. Okay. So the same clone project from Git and this one. So mass trainer server in Kotlin, this one. There are, when we create projects with IntelliJ, since this software is so flexible, you can have many projects, different kinds of projects, and this is done with Spring Boot technology using Kotlin. There are also settings for different languages, so we can choose different language for Spring Boot technology. So there are plenty of flexibilities. And when you choose it, you add features to it. Unfortunately, it's not adding any code. It's just adding libraries, which is already good because it's adding libraries. But there's no code generation in that, except just simple prompts when you type code. I will close this dice game because it will not use this one, and I will close this Android Studio for now. While you are installing IntelliJ, I will tell you how I created this project just to entertain you while it's doing download and all these things. So I created a project this way. Since this project is so simple, it was only 2 options added. So I click at New Project. When you didn't have a previous project, it will be closer to middle, like in Android Studio, New Project button. As you see, there are tons of different projects options, including React, React Native, various JavaScript projects. There is also a specific Java Enterprise project. I created this with clicking Spring Boot. After this, I selected folder where I want to go, this to be, and say, for example, this project something. I selected Kotlin, and I say builder. So this, it can be done in Java, Kotlin, or Groovy. The most information is available about Java, because most people use it, and textbooks are written about Java. If you use Kotlin, you can find information. At least one textbook exists, but it's not that easy to find. There is one textbook that teaches you how to use Kotlin on server side this way and Android. So there is at least one textbook written specifically for this combination. Spring Boot in Kotlin on the server side and Android on Android side. This textbook was written several years ago, and they didn't publish new edition, so it's already out of date for Android. And also, it was one release of Spring Boot after that, and it's actually different now, especially for security settings. Security settings changed drastically in Spring Boot. So that textbook is out of date. But many things can be figured out by analogy if you look up in Java book. So Kotlin. After this, build type. In Android, we use Gradle Kotlin. Makes sense. And I stick it to this, because we're familiar with Gradle Kotlin to some degree at least. So I stick it to that. If you use Java, many people do that, but not Kotlin, because this seems to be, although not Java, but it's currently, more people use it. Okay. You can select 21, which is fine, but it's better to select 17 here. And there are options to run it. I selected jar because it doesn't require installation separate server to run your server application. This requires separate server to run your server application in the server. This is wrapping server and your app together in one runnable file. Since that server is not large, so this is what people typically do, they wrap it in jar file. This way you don't need to install extra things. You don't need to repeat these steps. I'm just telling you how I created this project because we will just clone it. At the next, so I specified package, in this case test project. At the next, there are tons of options because this software is extremely flexible, Spring Boot. There are cloud options. You see, there are artificial intelligence options for different kinds of artificial intelligence, you see. So if you really if you need to have a fancy back end, this is the way to go. If you want to something simple, I just stick to something simpler because there is a learning curve. Tons of cloud options, tons of database options, SQL, any kind of database in SQL, no SQL, any kind of database existing. So this software is extremely, extremely broad in scope. What did I select? In developer tools, I selected one thing, Spring Boot DevTools. This will make a program run faster, restart faster when we test it. You see, faster restarts. So this was important. For web, I selected Spring Web that includes also REST web services. See? I didn't select any templates because template, it's a create HTML with data inserted to that. I'm not using this because I'm sending JSON. I'm not sending HTML. So this is templates. It's create HTML. So there are several ways to do it. To insert data, so it will generate HTML on the server side with inserted data. So I'm not using that one. If you select this Spring Web, you can also display HTML file if it is static. This is what I did. I created index.html to create a link to the data in it. So what we select is here. So I selected only two things. I didn't add any database because it generated quizzing by random numbers. You can retrieve data from the database, and this will be important if you maintain user data on the server. This way you will store it in some database on the server side. When you store user data on the server, of course you have to deal with logins. So user will, data from one user will not mix up with data from another user. This is, using logins is definitely extra step in complexity. And this is why my code is so short. It doesn't have databases in it. It doesn't have any kind of login data. It's also short on the servers on Android side because it doesn't have to log in. Adding login option makes it more interesting and more time to debug. This is why I could make it in one evening. Both sides, Android and this. Because there's no database, there's no logins. Okay. If you run server on your desktop, and of course click OK, it created code. So you see, create or create projects. How is your installation? Done? Finished? Did you all finish installation? Did you activate that license? Okay, cool. So if I click create, it will create the test project. We'll see it's. Unfortunately, there is no code generation at all. It creates only one file that starts the project. You don't need to edit this one. Anything else is added by new file, and so on. It has also settings files in it, like resources, and this is application properties. It's settings file that has only the name project in it. Other things you need to be either copy-pasted or added manually, or type it manually. This is definitely issue with this compared to Visual Studio and .NET technology, where you can click and it will create code for you. It is the reason why most students do not choose it for their capstone project, because it is quicker to reach the same simple functionality by clicking stuff in Visual Studio of Microsoft or Visual Studio Code. In this case, you have to copy-paste or type. Okay. It has more power, but it more time to deal with it. Okay. So other things, you can run it, but if you run it, it will not do anything because there's no code in it. If we click like new HTML file, and I say index, I click it in static. Static, it is for static things like images and HTML with static. In index HTML, I add it to that, and in H1, I can do H1 and say hello. When I click run, it will start server, but it will not open browser. It will say project started on the server on the port 8080. So if you go to localhost column 8080, you will see that hello in from index.html. So localhost 8080 hello. Okay. It's definitely not dynamic, it is static index.html. But it shows that it's working. Okay. So this is how I created project. After this, I was adding Kotlin stuff into this folder. It's critically important to add things to this folder. Do not outside of the folder, unless it is static or settings. If it is outside of the folder, it will not be found and it will not work. Although you will have a code, but by default it will not be found and it will not be available. It means the project folder. It has to be the same place as this file or in subfolders of the place where it is this file. So that is critically important. So you see it is Kotlin. If you create Java project, it will be Java. Okay? So I will close. It's important to stop it because we cannot run two servers on the same port. You cannot start another server on the same port. So I will stop it, and I will close it. So this was the approach how I created that project. Now let's clone it. I'm going to mass trainer server link. In week 8, there is a mass trainer server link here. Cloning exactly the same, copy this one as Android. You see copied. Next, you go to IntelliJ and see clone repository. And you paste with Command V that to address line. Okay. Make sure it goes to the place where you want it to be. I'm not sure if I want this to go there, or I can do in class. So a mass server, I will just create different folder for it. I'll say in class. Because I'm not sure, maybe my folder already have it in it, because I was working with it yesterday. Okay. And after this, we click clone. Say trust project. Since it's Kotlin, and I already have in Android Kotlin, in Android I already had some logic to generate problems based on random number generation. I could copy paste almost all of it because it's the same programming language. But since I need to create JSON, I have to be careful about what I send. The same way as when we store data into database. If our object is fancy, it's not necessarily mapping to database row. We have to make it such way that it goes into database row. So it is reasonably flat language, flat object, without object inside of an object inside of the object. Okay. When we set JSON, we can have an object inside of an object. Or we can create an object specifically, customize it to specific data that you want to send. So for this reason, I decided that, OK, I already have a code to generate objects, but I want to have a specific class to transfer the data. So like raw data, whatever. It's not raw data in this case. It's a math problem. And I will use the same class to pick the data from Android. So one to send and one to pick. So this way I have a match on both sides. I remember how we pick data from Android side. We have to create Kotlin classes that match JSON data that we receive. Okay. So I use the same approach. I use the same Kotlin class on the server side and the same Kotlin class on the receiver end from Android to send and receive the data. So this way I have a match. So it's easier this way because I just use the same class. Okay? So what do I have here? In my source, in main, in Kotlin folder, I have a domain. On both sides, I decided to simplify code by removing two interfaces. In previous code, I had the problem interface and algebra problem implementing this interface. I decided, OK, all my problems in my program are algebra problems. I'm not going to have problems in biology in this program, right? So, or anything. So I just deleted that interface to make code shorter. So I deleted problem interface completely out of the picture on both sides, Android side and server side. Also, I had the interface problem factory. And I had class algebra problem factory. Since I only have algebra problems, I decided I will get rid of that problem factory interface just to make code shorter. So I got rid of two interfaces just to have a code short on both sides. It's not required to delete them. I just short a code. Okay. So I have in the domain, I have algebra problem. And you see it's not inheriting from problem because I just deleted this interface to make it shorter. The rest is the same, including checking answer. Server side is not checking answer, but maybe later it will, if I do logins and exchanging data. So I decided to keep the same code on both sides, just in case. Okay. Algebra problem factory is not inheriting from problem factory, but the same code. Copy-paste. Okay. From Android program. It's Kotlin, so copy-pastable. And now, what is factory config? Remember, in Android, when we do dependency injection, we need to configure system with modules where we tell how to create objects that needs to be dependency injected. I'm injecting algebra problem factory in my code with dependency injection. Factory configuration, it is in Spring Boot, it is similar to Android module. It tells how to create the objects when they're necessary. A bean is similar to provides. It's a function that is returning object to be provided elsewhere. Okay. So I'm creating problem factory and returning just the result of the constructor call. So it is dependency injection. And this Spring Boot system is requiring dependency injection. In Android, it is just extra thing to make code easier to organize. In Spring Boot, it's absolutely unavoidable. It's essential part of the code. You cannot write any code without dependency injection in Spring Boot. So it's absolutely unavoidable, inseparable. Okay. So this is just creating problem factory and bean. It is similar to provides in Android. It is different dependency injection system. What is the difference? In Spring Boot, dependency injection is done at runtime when program starts. In Android, it is done by code generators. So it links most of it at compilation time. What is the rationale? Because rationale is that dependency injection at runtime is done each time when program starts. When dependency injection is implemented by code generation of factories at compilation time, it is done only when program is compiled. So program starts faster. So this is a rationale of the Google. To do dependency injection at compilation time, so mobile programs start faster. Starting time is not critical for the server because when you interact with the server, it's already running. So you send message from your app to a server that is already on. So you are not waiting till the server to start. But dependency injection at compilation, at runtime, is far more flexible and easier to code. So this is the rationale why it is done in Spring Boot. It's easier to code than in Android. So this is providing algebra factory. Where does it go? I created, this code is added on both sides now. I need to class that will be used to generate JSON and send it from the server. I will use the same class to get the data in Android. I just copy-paste the class. So I created algebra quiz problem. So this is what it will send. ID, text of the problem, and answer. And this is what I will receive on Android. ID, text of the problem, and an answer. Okay. This quiz problem will be wrapped in data class, algebra quiz, that will contain number of problems and list of problems. So I created two objects inside of each other that will be converted by the system to JSON that will travel to Android. And these two classes are copy-pasted to Android project to match it exactly. It was easier this way, right? Next, what is this one? This is new code, and it is on the server. It's not on Android, but although it is copy-pasted from previous one and edited. Okay, private method, get random problem list, which is list of algebra list problems. Because in order to send it, I need to get it, right? What does it use? It's using problem factory to do it. You see problem factory, get random problem. What is this? Dependency injected. Okay. Service add, service on top makes this object injectable itself. But it's not for Android, it is for the server-side system. And since it's injectable, parameters needs to be dependency injected as well, and you already saw it is provided by configuration class. So problem factory is dependency injected into this service, and it is used to get random problem list. And this is public, and this will be used elsewhere, right? And what does it do? It's creating algebra quiz object by calling constructor, number of problems, and this function call. So it is brute force. So I'm creating algebra quiz object. Okay. So this is injectable. Where does it go? It goes into controller, REST controller. A REST controller also makes this object injectable, but it's not going to your program, it's going into the system. Okay. So REST controller is injected somewhere in the library code of the system. And random quiz service, you already saw this code, is injected in the parameter of this controller. Now, what do we see here? Logger, it is to display messages at the bottom of the screen. Get mapping. Get mapping, it is associating this function call with received request. In this case, get request, give me data, get request, okay? It's default request for web, get. Give me, get data, okay? And it is associated, linked to the address random quiz. So if we send get request to the address random quiz, we will receive response. Otherwise, the response will be, oops, no, nothing. Okay, 4, whatever. What does it return? It returns random algebra quiz, but since it's REST controller, it will be returned as JSON object by default through web. Okay. So what does it do? If number of problems is not between 1 and 20, it's throwing exception. Exception here is creating error JSON. JSON that will contain error. Okay. Otherwise, it's calling random quiz service, get random quiz for this number of problems, and it is logging, and it is returning random quiz. Okay. This is definitely stupid because I already created this object and I just need to return existing quiz, not the new one. Okay. Why did I have it? Because I added logger after the fact, because I wanted to show that quiz is already generated. So when I added this logger, I had to create quiz variable. I shouldn't generate it again. Although it's not creating any issue, it is just different quiz. It is creating quiz twice. Okay. It is just me, stupid inefficiency. It was creating quiz twice. First time it was just to show message that it was created, and second it is new quiz. Okay. So I corrected. I will push this little change later. So let's run it and see what happens. I run it. Okay. It says it started on port 8080. Now I'm going to port 8080. What do I see? I have to reload this. Mass trainer server, so this is my HTML code. Index HTML. So what do I have in index HTML? In resources static index HTML, I have this. I see random quiz data and information. Okay. So it just says random quiz data is located at this address. So when I click on this one, I will see random quiz data. It takes me to address of the controller, You see get request and that mapping. So when get request comes to that address, it generated this random quiz. If I reload it, it will be new request and new quiz each time as JSON. What else? We have also parameter. If we look carefully in this method, we will find that is receiving a request parameter. And this is request parameter number of problems. That is by default 5. This is why you have 5 here. But it is parameter. So if you provide it, it won't be 5. And this is why if it is out of range, it's throwing exception. And 20 it is just made up. Number you can put 30, it will be up to 30. All right? So in order to provide request parameters, they go after question mark, like this. Question mark, then name of that, number of problems, and this is how it was specified here as a name. You see, I say value, this is the name, number of problems, and I say 2. Now it's 2. Okay, okay, let's do 15. Now it's 15 of them. You have to install plugin in order to view it nicely. Otherwise, it will be raw, it's one line. You need to install plugin into browser to view it nicely. Okay. This, 15. If it is more than 20, because this made up numbers, it would be up to 100 or more if you put it just in if later. So if you put like 25 and put it, you see, okay? So this is what happened. It's thrown exception, and exception is caught here, and return it response status bad request, and return it map with string and message. See, string and message. So this is string and map. This is key, and this is value. Return map of this. All right? So this is how it works. All code. It is short because I copy-pasted a lot from Android. Code already existing one. Explanation, hopefully it's not confusing. At least in terms of reading, in terms of writing something new, maybe it takes time to get used to that. But in terms of understanding existing one, it shouldn't be mysterious. It's the language that you already know. It is definitely dependency injection. But it is different dependency injection system, so it's using different add keywords. It is sending object, but since it is controller like REST control, it is creating JSON objects out of it. And I don't have time explaining Android part today. So it is already almost time to finish. And that will be beginning of next lesson. Questions? Yeah. As you see, it is not super overwhelming to create server-side. That's doing some simple stuff. But of course, if we add complexity, it will be longer. For example, if we add login option, we'll have to store logins somewhere, right? So it will be database for logins. We'll also have some authentication code. We'll also have some database per user's data, right? So it will be fancier queries to store data on the server side. So it can get complicated. But it's not super complicated for something like that. Okay. And now it's about to finish. So Android part didn't fit today. I will do it next time. I noticed this little issue. I created quiz for display message and returned a different quiz by creating a new one. I will push this update so it will be without that extra quiz created for no reason. Okay. And it will be this one, like in the minutes after that I push it. Okay. Questions? I just decided to display messages. By the way, at the bottom, you see these messages show up here. See number of problems received at the bottom. So let's do like 12, and it shows. You see, received get request, number of problems 12, generated quiz for the problems 12. It is for the demo purpose. When we send requests from Android, it will play. It will show here that it received request and generated stuff. Where does it come from? It's here. You see, received get request, number of problems, this number of problems, and here generated quiz, number of problems 12. Okay. So it is for sake of debugging Android code. When it is sending requests, receiving response, we will see these messages on the server that received a request and sent it response. All right. Now it's time to finish. Questions? Okay. Hopefully it is somewhat inspiring that it's not difficult to do, but big warning that complicated things are complicated. It's not surprising that in any software complicated things are complicated. If we look at easy tasks, like for your capstone project, honestly, it is quicker to do it in .NET. I'm sticking this to Kotlin because you already know Kotlin. You cannot do .NET in Kotlin. All right? So, done for today. Please don't postpone working on assignment. Okay. So.